Your dungeon master has placed you in a dreadfully precarious position.
When we were in high school, it was not. Like, I dare utter the words Warhammer, Dungeons and Dragons, Magic.
This is what I'll tell everyone out there. If you want your franchise wrecked, put Marlon Wayans in it.
JJ, what am I doing here? I'm gonna get medieval on your ass.
Always start off with the great intro. We gotta love the intro.
Yes.
Welcome everyone to episode 6 of Getting Medieval. If you survived episode 5, and actually let me take this moment to thank everybody that has been watching, that has been commenting. We appreciate all the feedback, whether it's good or bad. We definitely want to see it, but also those numbers have been growing week to week, so we really appreciate that. I am Alexander Storm. Right over to the side's my better half, Dr. Brantley, and down below is Darth Moocher from the Sorlek Digest podcast, best damn podcast channel on YouTube. How's everybody doing tonight?
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Well, we're going to switch it up. We've been going through the Rings of Power for the last several weeks, and obviously the Rings of Power has concluded.
Yes.
So, again, it's just not Lord of the Rings. The show is about, dragons, magic, and swords. So, we're going to throw it into some different segue. But I know, Darth Moocher, you wanted to roll in from the Lord of the Ring into what we're going to talk about tonight, which is Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, bittersweet moment. Lord, Rings of Power is over. We have to wait, but we get to consume it over and over and over again and talk about it, because again, the talk never leaves our table and it's just continuous. It's a lifelong journey when it comes to all this fantasy stuff. And I think it's a good kind of segment of what we're going to be getting into with this podcast and everything that stems from Lord of the Rings, because I will say that without Tolkien and without his world building and the notion of you can build these kind of worlds that with languages and races and mythos and all that stuff, you would not have 90% of the stuff you have today. And I would even go so far as even saying you probably wouldn't even have Star Wars. You probably wouldn't even have all the pop culture that we love without Lord of the Rings proper. So I want to give that kind of a foundation as we journey into Dungeons and Dragons and other fantasy and medieval stuff that we all kind of love and consume. I know that with Dungeons and Dragons, it's stemmed from a need for a tabletop board gaming, like Army, Civil War, or just Army board, tabletop stuff. And the guys wanted to do a fantasy role, and it kind of stems from there, right? But I do feel, and like I said, this is my opinion, but I do feel that they took a lot of this, like Lord of the Rings is the ultimate D&D adventure, the ultimate D&D adventure. From the humble, you walk into a tavern, you do this, what do you do? That's the typical D&D campaign, and how everything starts. It's exactly how Lord, the Lord of the Rings started, and the Hobbit, right? So it's like you get to kind of like reverse engineer it a little bit with Lord of the Rings proper, and then we fast forward to Dungeons and Dragons, which is not just a board game anymore or a tabletop game anymore. It's the theater of the mind. That's where it started. But now we've got video games, we've got movies, we have countless shows that references Dungeons and Dragons, from sitcoms to new movies, and I hope they continue this trend, and with the help of pop culture and podcasts like this, like Stranger Things and Big Bang Theory, they revitalize this. It seems to be like almost every 10 years Dungeons and Dragons comes back to the forefront and back into our daily talk. And then it's great that more and more people are getting into it, with the card games, like the TCG card games, like Magic the Gathering. All of this is all credited for Dungeons and Dragons, which is all credited for Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. So that's my segue, our segue from what we've been talking about into a brand new territory for us to bring to the forefront. But of course, Dungeons and Dragons has been around since 1974, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So a couple years before I was born. Yeah.
After I was born.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's been around my whole life, our whole lives, basically. And It's gone through some trials and tribulations. But
well, I remember the first time I really heard about Dungeons and Dragons was in E.T. The kids are playing Dungeons and Dragons at the kitchen table before they go get the pizza outside and find the tracks and everying.
That is interesting. Yeah.
And that's what made me actually go, and I got one of the first packs, has a little booklet and all that stuff. And I just didn't have any other people that were interested that wanted to play with it, with me. So it was kind of a fringe thing at the beginning. Yeah. So, so I got one, and I wish I still had that because it's probably worth some money.
Your dungeon master has placed you in a dreadfully precarious position. You're playing the most phenomenal game ever created. Your skin grows cold from your first glimpse of the enormous beast. It's a product of your imagination. Survival depends on a quick, decisive move. Your choices are limited. Stand and fight, or run. Use your lightning bolt. Victory is yours.
Win the treasure.
TSR Hobbies, Dungeons and Dragons games. Products of your imagination.
Yes, it is. If anybody has first edition player's handbooks or whatever, those, collector's items, they're grails. They are, what about you, Alex? Like, have you dabbled in this world of ultimate geekdom? No. This is really ultimate geekdom.
I have seen it done. I've never played it before. And it was probably right around the 5th or 6th grade. I saw some friends in the class that was when they started getting into Transformer comics and G.I. Joe comics, and then there was Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And that was always like of course, like Dr. Brennan said, the fringe. Just like when you haven't totally fallen into like total part of geekism until you've gotten into Dungeons. Once you've gotten into Dungeons and Dragons, okay, it's
too late.
Like 5th level of hell, as they like Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
But there's, again, I've doing a deep dive in this. I remember the CBS cartoon that came on Saturday. I thought it was enjoyable. Yeah. And some of the references, this is always kind of cracks me up. The references go back and forth between like the animated and the show and then the movies and everything. And it's not quite as like detailed as the books and the actual lore. It's like they pick and choose. So you don't get you get established to it, but not in the kind of way where you're like, expert class or like you really like when we're watching Tolkien stuff, you can watch Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit or some of these movies and you can get established into that without having to look at the source material. But Dungeons and Dragons still holds it. The source material is the absolute thing you need to start with. And then everything else is kind of explained into it.
Yeah, it's a total theater of the mind storytelling. It's your adventure. So, as from established books, the creators really wanted people to sit and you tell a story. So yes, you have stats, you have your player sheets, and you have your monster guides, and you have everything else that kind of you can pull into your own little creation. And they do have campaigns that you can do, and that puts you in a world and it puts you in these established rules. The best thing about it is you could do whatever you want within your character, playing to your character's strengths and weakness. But at the end of the day, you walk away not just a board game. It's like we just witnessed a 10-hour movie and we got to be a part of it. And that's I think the whole difference of it. And as Dungeons and Dragons in general gives you a ton of options, monsters, characters, places, things, of items. You can make up your own. If there is, so you're actually encouraged to make up your own. It's encouraged to take a monster from the monster guide and change it around to whatever you want and make your own backstory for it. And that's the great thing about the world building element to it, and so there's not a lot of people as critical as like Lord of the Rings saying, no, that doesn't matter. Lord of the Dungeons and Dragons, you could do your own thing. Now, and again, you're encouraged to do it. It's not where it's like, nope, that has to be do it. And you have to be in online arguments about, what Stranger Things, like, no, Vecna didn't do it. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So,
and I think that's the aspect now that's a little bit more appealing at this stage, is that because we dabble in the world of writing for others and everything, and this is the exercise that Dr. Brantley and I do constantly.
You guys would be perfect for it.
We throw out an idea and it just goes further and further. And the thing I appreciated especially about this week's episode was that you really had to do a deep dive into a lot of the lore and the backgrounds. And then I remember at the Hasbro Pulse con, they actually introduced a lot of the new expansion books and their virtual board and all these other great items. And I remember watching that segment and I was like, wow, there's I can't believe that this is still going this strong. And the marketing, and it was a lot of excitement and buzz from just the Dungeons and Dragons, the new accessories and everything. And that's when I kind of thought well, this is definitely something that at this point of our careers and times is something I definitely would like to dab into a little bit more.
100%.
Yeah, I think Stranger Things probably helped a lot.
Swallowing you in darkness. It is almost here. What is it?
What if it's the Demogorgon? Oh, Jesus, we're so screwed if it's the Demogorgon.
It's not the Demogorgon.
Yes.
Get It Out There Again, and then the new movie from Paramount.
It pushed a new generation of what is that, and that's like I said, it's cool. Being the whole geek culture, it's cool now, right? It's in. When we were in high school, it was not like, I dare utter the words Warhammer, Dungeons and Dragons, Magic, Star Wars. Now it's like, what do you mean you haven't heard of these things? And what do you mean you don't, because again, the pop culture and entertainment has caught up to it. Stranger Things was a huge boost. They even have like a Stranger Things starter set with their version of the Demogorgon and their version of Vec and all that stuff going up, which is great, and I encourage it myself. I encourage it, it was so funny because I was watching Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. I go through these little. I was like, I want to binge Nightmare on Elm Street for Halloween. And Part 3, I forgot about this, but they're playing like a Dungeons and Dragons in that movie when the psych ward, with the kid that was in the wheelchair and the kid that couldn't talk, and then the I was like, it's been here it's always been here, my experience with it was probably into my teenage years when I discovered tabletop gaming in general, like Warhammer, with the miniatures, and then you would have the rules, and then you start to go like, okay, what's this? And I started getting into like certain types of music and like all these things that were very, forbidden, so and D&D was one of them. And and it was at lunch after school, or not during school at lunch, we'd set up a half-hour quick camp, or mostly it's just creating characters, and then we would promise to get to his other house and play and stuff. But today I have played across internet, I have played live, and one of the best things to do is invite your friends over and say, look, it's going to be about 3-4 hours, and just show up. And then what you do as a game master is you set up an environment in your home, either a game, you don't have to do this, but it's just cool to do it. Set the music, set the lighting, set the, everything, have a campaign ready to go. And just tell the players, sit down, here's your character. And you give them a motive, like, here is what's happening in this tavern, a motivation, and then go. Like, what do you do? That is the thing. And then you just kind of tell the story as you go on, and it could be everything from like, well, I get up and I want to kill everybody in the tavern. Okay, well, that didn't go well because this is what happened. And then as a GM, you're constantly making those rules up as you go, you know.
Plus,
Yeah.
also, is that the guy that we let leave first, or is that the guy that we?
You'll know
You
very
get in his
quickly.
car later.
Yeah.
Like, do we have to worry about going to my car later that night?
Yeah. So yeah, and you'll know very quickly in your party who to trust, not to trust,
Yeah.
and sometimes that's just the way the character is built. An
Yeah.
aggressive, mean, or whatever. You build these characters, and then the part of it is like working together with that. Like, look, let's not let Olog go first. We let him in the back. We don't tell him everything. We don't let him know that because he's a loose can't. So again, it really puts you in this imagination on the fly. You know, it really kind of you're setting this tone and this entertainment within yourselves. And again, it's the ultimate, like, you can, you know, be a gamer, you can collect things, you can go and, you know, do all these things, but it's as soon as you sit down and have that character sheet in front of you, you're into a level of, like, you know, that's it. I don't think anything else besides LARPing, you know, which is live action role playing outside, which is great. I don't do it, but I love it. I encourage it all. But it's right in that, you know.
I've been to the Renaissance Fair with my aunt, and we went dressed up. She has the whole thing because she was part of the was a Society for Creative Anachronism. Which so they get dressed up and had, you know, parties and events like that. But
it's great, man. I celebrate that kind of you know, way that humans have developed this narrative in fantasy. You know what I mean? I celebrate. I didn't grow up with liking sports. I didn't grow up like with the normal, you know, watching fights and UFC and stuff. I can care less. Like, yeah, but put a sword in that guy's hand. You know what I mean? Like, you get into this fantasy element, and I thrive in that. Like, I love just witnessing those worlds. Like, when we get into more stuff in this podcast too, when we talk about, like, you know, Willow and Beastmaster, and it's all there. It's like, it's just great. And again, it's the greatest D&D campaigns you can ever imagine. And if you have that mindset and you're watching a movie, I think people will enjoy movies more when they do that, rather than and movie creators should do that too. It's like, don't ground it in Earth. Make a high fantasy film. Do more of those. You know, like, I know I know we'll get into, like, more like the cartoon and stuff, but the recent movie that came out, I actually, and I wasn't nervous at it at all, because again, D&D has a way of just saying, look, here's a fantasy movie and it's D&D. Yeah, but it's too funny. Yeah, well, have you ever played D&D? Because you do have some levity. You do have some stuff that your character does, and you make it fun. It's a fun experience. It's not always, you know, unless that's what you guys want to do. So when the movie was fun, I was sitting back, oh, this is great. Like, I don't have to think about it. It's great, you know.
Yeah, I just rewatched it earlier today.
Yeah, it's a fun ride.
Ending is fantastic.
I hope they do more, you know. And what I would love for them to do is, like, and don't even use these characters. Just have a new set of characters and call it Dungeon Dragons something.
A new
Dungeon
land,
Dragons,
you know, a new land, different characters, different creatures, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I thought the Chris Pine one that came out, I think it was what, 23, 22.
Yeah,
can't remember what year, but that was a little bit more enjoyable. It had funny moments and everything. And again, there's light sides, not light sides, and everything. I thought that was a far better example than the 2000 New Line Cinema version of Marlon Wayans. And this is what I'll tell everyone out there: if you want your franchise wrecked, put Marlon Wayans in it. From G.I. Joe to Dungeons and Dragons, this guy is destroying franchises.
I second that. As soon as Marlon Wayans comes out and it goes, I gotta get me one of these. That's it. I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out. You know,
like, if you want to, like, get up out of the theater. Like, is it too late for me to get a refund?
Yeah.
Well, this was and it's very rare when you're able to watch Tubi. And like I said, again, I'm not slighting on Tubi, because we know some guys, they do movies for Tubi. And then there's some movies that pop up on Tubi that you're like, okay, this is the bottom of the screen barrel that they put on. This was by far, next to Ultraviolet, one of the worst films I have ever sat through. And I kept looking at the time, because I was hoping, like, magically wise, there was a spell that
Yeah.
time to go forward faster
Oh man.
than for this movie. This movie is terrible.
So I
and
haven't
the
seen this.
CGI in it is, I'm
Yeah.
like, it's
For
a
2000?
2000 movie. And
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Dr. Brantley and I was talking, and just several years ago, before that, they had done Jurassic Park.
Yeah, yeah.
And this movie
7
is-
years before.
Yeah.
So,
you know,
so when you see the CGI in this
Oh my
one, you're
God.
like, oh, they were cutting some corners.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like one of those early 90 video games. And like now, if you see like a generation now will turn on a video game and be like, wow, what the heck is this? Like that's how bad that the dragons didn't even look like they were in the frame. And they had Jeremy Irons in this movie. And like I was shocked. I was like, they should take his his Screen Actors Award card from him. Like
they
that
should at
should
least
just be
temporarily
revoked.
hold it, right? So
I don't know. I
Oh,
think he was
wow.
the best thing in the movie, though, because he was so
And
crazy.
that's how bad the movie was. He was the best thing and the worst part of it. So
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Like,
I
let
don't-
fire rain! I was like, oh, boy.
I was like, I felt so bad. I was like, there's Dungeons and Dragons fans, like G.I. Joe fans, that are turning over in the graves right now over this.
yeah.
one.
I
So,
haven't seen it, and now I'm
It's a
curious.
skippable
Just for
You should.
torture purposes, yeah. Just
Yeah.
for torture
Well-
purposes, I'm kind of curious.
Now,
it's almost a drinking game movie.
Oh,
Almost a
boy.
drinking game movie.
I did do a little research on that movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was voted in the last 10 years as the 39th worst film of all time,
Wow.
which top 40.
Now
That's
they've been
out of
doing
all the
movies
movies
for
that have come out.
100 years now. That's
Of all
100 years worth of
time.
movies.
And at the same time, now imagine this. Marlon Wayans was going back and forth because he was shooting 2 movies at the same time.
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons, like in Romania or something. And then going back to New York to do Requiem for a Dream, where he was fantastic.
Yes. Yes.
And so, just to see these 2 different performances that were going on at the same time, you're like,
Wow.
what the
Yeah.
hell was going on?
He left
the
all his
director-
energy.
Of Dungeons and Dragons 2000, first time director.
Well, yeah.
He was very young. I think he was 24 when he first went and to try and get the rights to it.
Wow.
Because people had been trying to make movies and stuff, but I guess the owners, TSR at the time, didn't really like what they were doing, or they just couldn't work things out. And so he got the rights, and then he was going around for almost 10 years trying to put it together and get the money for it. It was the biggest independent film at the time. It cost somewhere between $35 and $45 million.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's like it wasn't
Money
cheap.
well spent.
Is he still directing? Like, I don't know. Is he still?
He is more of a producer.
I got you.
Oh,
He only did
He's
a
like,
couple
I know
of
how to
things.
get money for you for these movies.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah.
But
But if you
actually
got
he
40
did a
million
couple
for that.
things.
This man is working magic all on his own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like I
But,
said, it piques my curiosity even more and
Yeah.
more to dive into it.
Yeah, but no, it was a fun Easter egg kind of drop in where you're like, they mentioned, Shadow Realms, a couple of aspects. They tried to do
Yeah.
certain moments and things from the game itself,
Yeah,
or
I-
mentions of the game, but it just
Yeah.
didn't have the heart and desire. And when I watched
well, that's
the
yeah.
Dungeons Dragons Honor Among Thieves, I was like, okay, this had a lot more of the lore and the levels from the game, and they didn't really kind of bog it down, but yet they gave you enough in it where if you were curious about Dungeons and Dragons,
Yeah.
you would probably find yourself going to it from the Honor Among Thieves movie that came out.
Yeah, there's some staples that tell you it's a Dungeons Dragons movie or
Yeah.
whatever. The owlbear, the mimics, there are some and dragons,
and a
they could
dungeon.
have, and if you have to be in a dungeon, you got to go in dragon. But like I said, you could take almost every single fantasy movie, sci-fi movie, and put it in the setting of telling the story of D&D. So I'm curious about that movie, because I will look at it like, all right, I could take the references and put it aside, but let's watch this. And if they call it Dungeons and Dragons, Otherwise, why call it that? So there is there's still, even though I say there is really you kind of do your own thing, but to have the title, that's gonna, you kind of have to follow that a little bit, bit more.
He did his own campaign. I will tell you that. He did his own campaign.
Yeah. I read a little bit about what they were thinking when they were writing the script, and first of all, it was something like 16 drafts
God.
over the years, and the end was like put together like a little bit of this, a little bit of this, kind of a thing.
So I'm sure they want to do a trilogy also, right? Because everybody out in the 2000s all want to do trilogies.
They actually did.
Did they?
There was the next one was a couple years later, and it was a sci-fi original movie, so straight to TV.
I do remember that. Oh my God, that was a sequel to that.
Yes.
Oh no.
And then it had the one guy with the blue lipstick, the bad guy. He was the only returning character.
Yeah, I distinctly was one of those Friday night sci-fi movies.
Yes.
But I didn't put one and two together until you told me this right now that's a direct sequel. I was like, I do remember those. And God, those were awful.
And then they did a third one, which was like in 2012 or something. Yeah. And it was only on British television.
Wow.
Okay.
So
these are things we don't know what's going on around us. We think like what's out there in the theaters or on video on demand is this is it. There's another world of things going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I do. So I remember growing up watching it was a TV movie, and it starred Tom Hanks. But it was more or less about the satanic panic.
Like Wizards and Warriors or something
Wizards
like that.
and Warriors, where it was so, because Dungeons and Dragons got a real bad rap.
It did.
It's like I said, it is such an innocent thing, really, to really like if you sit people down and that are kind of concerned about it at that time in the 70s and the 80s, right? Season 3 of Stranger Things was all about, or season 4, sorry. Was all about the satanic panic and how it was such paranoia, heavy metal music, all these things. And then that movie came out with Tom Hanks that it was like, it's innocent, but again, here it's not innocent because they had like, this kid was all into it and, hurting people and stuff.
Yeah, and he was gonna like jump off a bridge or something. Because he was so into it, and his friends had to pull him back.
Yeah, so into the game, and he could not withdraw from reality to fantasy and stuff.
Going to join the Great Hall.
You can't. It's a trap.
I have spells. I'm going to fly.
You don't have enough points. I am the maze controller.
Maze control?
Yes. And I have absolute authority in this game.
Game?
Game.
Game. TJ, what am I doing here?
If you take the creativity out of children and just any, you have no movies to go to, you have no music to go to, you take that out. Like there was a saying that says every kid is born an artist until they go to school, because then school ruins it. It takes the art right out of it, takes math and the fun right out of it, and the science, everything out, and then they become mundane, and then it's those small cracks that those kids that they latch onto and understand what they're doing. Like I always told my son when growing up, I said, look, right from wrong, then you do you, as long as you're not hurting anybody, or what, again, what fantasy is and what reality is. Please, dive into things, read and play games and do things, but also don't, be healthy about it too. Because as a gamer myself, I know how being unhealthy could be,
I can imagine as a parent though, right? You're like, go into your kid's room and he's talking about dragons and spells and we're going to do some stuff. And it's like, what the hell? Oh yeah, we got to stop this.
Yeah. And it's a sign of the times at that time, right? Everybody's very conservative, like really, how dare you? But at the meantime, you had discos, you had drugs, you had all these things going on in the 70s, but this is what they're worried about, So.
Well, and I can see the jump too, because there was a level satanism that was running rampant during those time periods, and people mistakenly, because I remember that they
Uh,
had like it was on the nightly news. I think it was like
yeah, sure,
Tom
sure.
Brokaw or somebody
Yeah,
was talking about the D&D and the situations, and I
yeah.
think we do that in like in the early '90s. It was the extreme lyrics that was on rap albums that they had to
Yes.
have the thing,
Gang
and then it
violence
was
and
the
approved
video
that, right.
gaming code, and I
Yeah.
think that lawmakers and people in the 40s
Tipper
and
Gore.
50s, it was
Tipper
comics
Gore.
burning outside,
Uh-huh. And
Yeah,
now
yeah.
it's social media.
yeah,
Yes.
without social media, but now social
Well, no,
media
I'm saying,
are
but
gaming
today
now.
the
Yeah,
thing that people are scared about is social
yeah,
media and how it's affecting kids and all that, which there is some validity to it.
Yeah, yeah,
But
sure. Yeah.
also, these you have to let people, express themselves and be who they
Yeah, I
are.
mean, like I said, with this type of like gaming and experience entertainment, it is geared towards introverts. It really is. I mean, it's
mhm,
like this is our little leagues. This is our after school things we did, and if you latch on to it again, as long as the kid knows that. All right, you can walk away, but there's that, you have to be able to wiggle your toes so you don't get a heart attack, or you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like
yeah,
there's things like that. I feel like, again, how I grew up and how things that I've been watching on TV, I go, geez, all these guys had to be into this stuff,
mhm,
because without D&D and Lord of the Rings, how did they come up with this stuff? How did they sit and go, how did they
mhm,
world build from the ground up, right? Because one of the best aspects of Dungeons and Dragons is not just taking campaigns, but sitting with a blank piece of paper and be like, all right, when I have 5 companions, and this is the world I'm going to present them, and how am I going to get from? I want them to get to this castle, and I know they could do whatever they want, but I'm going to lead this way and lead these breadcrumbs to this castle to tell the story, right? Without having background and experience that as a kid, or it just in general, like that. That's why I encourage it so much. I encourage movie watching, all that stuff. But yeah, you watch Star Wars, and they say those things had to come from somewhere.
mhm.
All that stuff had to.
And when you
Well,
look at it from the aspect, I think it is just it's the time period that we're living in and that people have, because like Dungeons and Dragons was such an obscure thing that people were
yeah.
almost wanted to seem like they wanted to bury it. Yet go to any comic book store
Oh
today
yeah,
and
in
you'll
the back. Yeah.
see like kids with like whether it's Pokemon or
Hmm.
Magic the Gathering or anything like that,
Yeah.
and there's yet no outcries from this scenarios, and it was Dungeons and Dragons really that kind of like revolutionized that
Yeah.
and brought
It
it
took the
into the
yeah.
mainstream. And now it's like again,
Yeah.
comic book stores don't sell comics as much. They sell a crap load of card
This is
games. And
gaming
there are
manuals and
cards the kids dropped off on Saturday, and that's what they're
yeah.
doing now. And
Yeah.
I knew that Dungeons and Dragons had made a turn because we've all been to Comic Con. I've been going to Comic Con since we were like 16, 17 years
Yeah.
old.
Yeah.
And I remember the one year that they had a huge like tournament for Dungeons and Dragons there, and it was like literally hundreds of people
Yeah.
that were there, and that's when the turn came. But like Dr. Brantley was saying, everybody's saying Stranger Things. I think The Big Bang Theory.
Never played Dungeons and Dragons with girls before.
Oh, don't worry, sweetie. No one has.
That helped a lot.
Actually shepherded in a little bit earlier
Yeah.
than that, because there was Hollywood actors and directors that had
Yeah.
those big Dungeons and Dragon parties and everything else. So I think Big Bang Theory is the thing that really kind of ignited that.
Yeah. That definitely put it, because again, in that world of Big Bang Theory, they're the epitome of nerds and geeks, and they
Mhm.
had to do it, and they did it in such a smart way, because again, the campaigns were innocent. They were very tongue in
Yeah.
cheek, and they played it as a sitcom would do that.
Okay, who wants a drink?
Get with that penny. We don't consume alcohol during Dungeons and Dragons. It impairs our judgment.
Oh, this isn't alcohol. It's a magic potion that makes me like you.
Double potion, please.
And the writers were very smart about that, and then you get to Stranger Things, which is more of a serious note,
Yes.
more of that deeper fantasy element to it, and like I said, and both worlds exist.
Oh! That didn't come from the troglodytes. No, that came from something else.
Demogorgon! We're in deep shit.
Will, your action!
I don't know.
Fireball him! They'd have to roll a 13 or higher.
Too risky. Cast a protection spell.
Don't be a pussy! Fireball him!
Cast protection.
The Demogorgon is tired of your silly human bickering!
You can have both of those things, you know. The TV references and all that stuff, like you said, with Big Bang, I think made it a household name when it came to like, oh, look I love the show. The characters are great. They're great stories. And look, they play video games. They're into, you know, World of Warcraft, and they're into like Dungeons and Dragons. And so it maybe put people at ease with it. They're like calm with it, you know, like, and also made that nostalgia. I used to play that, or I heard about that when I was growing up. And I thought it was all like, you know, very cultish and stuff. And I'm like, you know, anything in this world can be cultish, anything, you know what I mean? And I like I said, that's why I thoroughly love Big Bang Theory, and I thoroughly love Stranger Things, because again, it is both, you know, best of both worlds, you know.
So much fun that goes on, and I think it's made us look at the time. Although I always tell people, the Stranger Things, if you think the 80s looked like neon and the rest of this stuff, you didn't live through the 80s. No. You know, they're over dramatized it just a way tad bit. There was not all that neon that was rolling around, but it does make you look back and you look at those times and you see how truly innocent they were. Compared to now, you're looking at it from a different angle. Well, and you know, it's just there was a point of, I think the one reason why I think Dungeons and Dragons is such a vital game in today's market is it pulls you together. You know, back in the day, they say video games. Well, look, video games is uniting people too. There's a bunch of kids online that are playing with other people. They're playing tournaments in Japan and all over the world here. And I think that Dungeons and Dragons forces you to sit down with somebody, whether it's virtually or in front of them, and that camaraderie of you and the experience and people. I think that's what's definitely needed, especially now.
There is you gather like once a month to play this kind of game, because you have to give the GM some time to flesh things out and be prepared for all of these scenarios. And the hard work is on the GM, right? He's got to tell the story, and it's your job as players to walk in that room and accept it and be like, all right, for the next few hours, this is what we're doing. And you look forward to it. You look forward to it. And then you start thinking about like, okay, Mike, you know, you get like bonus points for acting as your character would act. And you also get bonus points for actually role playing. You know what I mean? Like talking in the you know, the way your character would talk, or acting or reacting in that thing. So, and it's encouraged. It's not necessary. Like you could go in there straight laced, and you'd be like, no, I go here and I slash this dude. No, okay, I jump over this table, you know, and whatnot. But yeah, it gives, you know, human race is all about entertainment. It has been since the inception, since we began to walk. You know what I mean? We've had. So I always remember that history of the world. You know, the first art. And art.
And of course, with the birth of the artist came the inevitable afterbirth, the critic.
I love it. So it's a need, especially. Okay, so we're all Gen X here too. Like, you know, we're in that same generation too, where, you know, we're 50s, before 50s, after 50s. We're wearing Boba Fett shirts. We're wearing Dungeons and Dragons shirts. We're collecting toys, and it's like, but our parents at our age did not do this.
No,
our parents at that age don't do this, and I don't think our kids are going to do it. It really is a generational thing, but it'll morph into something different, to where the foundation and the generation that accepted it and actually like put it into their lives, I think, will be appreciated when the millennials or the Gen X and Gen Alpha gets in there and they start doing their own version of it. And it might not look like what it's doing, you know, what we're doing. And that's a great reason why they put things in the 80s, like why they set Stranger Things up in the 80s, you know. Because it was the time of, like I said, it was a time of, we didn't have these, You know, we had to go to the libraries. We had to go and talk to friends to get the news and see what's out there. And I sometimes miss that anticipation of like, all right, Friday, I'm going to go and we're going to, sit and we're going to play and do these things. And then we'll see each other in another 30 days,
Yeah.
But
And I think you're right. I think it's like when you look at that aspect, it's like they say that the World War II generation was the greatest generation that ever lived. I think that the Gen X and the kids from the 80s will be the most imaginative
I agree.
generation that ever lived, because like all we were on the press of, like, like we had just gotten people into majorly flying all over the world, and then internet. We're caught in between that, but our imaginations, you had to, whether you watched the old Star Wars, with the books and the tapes, imagination was very well used. And I think that that's pushing forward now. And same thing too. We had some of the best IPs because we did have some of the best creatives on the face of the planet working on that.
And look, today the same IPs are still around. They're still making.
They'll go back and get something from the 80s or the 70s and wait till Buck Rogers comes back around.
Yes. I will watch it too.
Well, and part of it was we had to have imaginations because like computer graphics were not good.
Well,
I remember the very first computer game I got was sort of text-based, where it was called Oubliette, and it was a Dungeons and Dragons kind of a thing. You start in a dungeon, and it's like you can go north, south, east, or west. And there was just like a little it was just the little bars from the keyboard. And so every time you'd move, they would go like forward like that, but it was just the very basic kind of thing. But it was all, you had to put it in your head. It's like, oh, there's a dragon there. Okay, what do you do? And, it was very limited, but the only way it worked is if you used your imagination.
You bought into it. Just like everything that every time you walk into a movie theater, you got to suspend disbelief. You got to just put yourself in there. And that's why, like I always say, if there's a joke or some sort of comedy that takes you out of it, it really takes you out of it. Because look, I'm supposed to be in a dungeon. And I'm not supposed to be joking about Marlon Wayans. I'm like, hey, let's go. But and also, we grew up with the rotary phone to cell phones. We grew up with our having to babysit our siblings or be at home by ourselves. I did. I had, both my parents worked, and I 6 o'clock in the night they would come home, and so I would take the bus. I would be on my own. So a lot of times I'm living up here, and D&D and Star Wars. It was just there, and you played, like, we collect figures, but when we played them, we played out these elaborate campaigns with these figures, and it's just such a rewarding memory. I think that we all have, and like I said, I hope that people watching us have their own kind of ideas on, even if it's not Dungeons and Dragons, let us know, why we gravitate towards this so much, and why is it like I always said, like, all this stuff dies with us in a sense, it meaning like the purity of it. And I'm not talking about the beginnings. I'm talking about how we consumed it and how it was there for us at times. And it wasn't a cool thing to do. It was just the thing that we did because we didn't have anybody, other friends, or we didn't have the internet to just pop on somewhere. We had we had books. We had the choose your own adventure books. We had the D&D cartoon. We had, we had movies. We had comic books. And that's why you go to the toy aisles, you go to comic book stores, and it's still our age staring back at us.
Exactly.
The gray hair is staring back at us like, aha, I know why you're here. You're here because the same reason I'm here, and that's why entertainment today cannot move past the IPs that were so great in the 80s.
Like we may have to design a Getting Medieval t-shirt with like the back saying, "We made it cool." We made it cool. We were the people that got the dumps on when we went to conventions. And
it was
we went to the stores and bought all this stuff, and we were grabbing the Dark Knight Returns off the shelf and everything, and people were really giving it to us. We made it cool. so you could watch it and watch neon facsimiles of it.
That's right. Yeah. And I
you could take your girlfriend to a Marvel movie and she's not going to be real pissed off about it.
Exactly.
100%. 100%. We just did, like I said, to go on a little tangent. I just did a from the Star Wars talk, right? We just did a thing where the dark times of Star Wars, where we didn't know to talk about it when we're walking down the aisles of high school. I didn't connect with people because of Star Wars. That was like, you just didn't bring it up. It was not a thing I thought to bring. But when it did happen to slightly get in there, it was like, wait a minute. You are like me. And that's how Dungeons and Dragons was with me. That's how Warhammer was with me. And just kind of like it was a little taboo because it's got a stigmatism attached to it from society, and so that made it even more desirable. You know what I mean? Maybe buy those read Conan Barbarian, but get into fantasy, real hardcore fantasy, real dragons, and study dragon art and study a lot of things. Lord of the Rings is one of them too. It's there. It's all there. And I said this on about the Lord of the Rings podcast. So I'm so glad to be born in this time frame of that we had that stuff. So like I couldn't see going back, 100 years or 50 years or whatever, and it was like it wasn't there. We didn't have Star Wars. We didn't have, we didn't have D&D. And that's so sad.
Yeah, it was this cool time where progress was being made with computers and all this kind of stuff that just didn't exist for our parents. And we have seen that entire evolution from, like you said, the rotary phone to the cell phone.
We saw it all, and we were the slacker generation, right? We were called slackers. They're good for nothing. You're lazy. But in the meantime, what we were doing was we're studying. We were learning how to be artists. We were learning how to have an imagination. We were learning how to take the stuff that works and carry it over, and live in the world where we're consumers, pop culture. And we make all those things popular today by going and watching, consuming. And it's fan. And I enjoy that a hell of a lot more than I do like a baseball game and stuff. I'm not begrudging anybody. Again, I go do that stuff. But again, this is like another part of that world. Like you mentioned, how video games, like the esports. I absolutely love watching esports. Like I can flip on like CNN, the Ocho, right, and just put it on and watch StarCraft tournaments, World of Warcraft arena tournaments, and sit there and just be like, this is awesome. I want to go. I want to, and it's a worldwide phenomenon. And the geek culture has really put some stakes in the world. I'm like, this is what we want to do. I know that the esports is still popular, but it hasn't taken off as much as it should have.
Well, I used to work in Burbank, right by the Blizzard Arena.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
I didn't even know was a thing. And then, but just going by it, and I'm like, wait a second. This whole thing is like for games?
Yeah. It's, man, like I said, I'm a huge World of Warcraft fan. And again, without Dungeons and Dragons, you wouldn't have World of Warcraft. And those guys would tell you, the creators of World of Warcraft will tell you that, no, we were D&D guys. We were board games, tabletop gamers. And we created this world. Even their world, how they built it from the ground up, is a complete mythos, a complete reworking.
But it's also like a video game version of how you do, it's like they have little places to go. You got your armies or whatever, and characters can do different spells. And
stats almost reflect how D&D stats were. They almost took like the first gaming company to do that. Besides EverQuest, Ultima, like there's a lot of MMOs out there, but Blizzard really took that model of Dungeons and Dragons and made it a game, and took the way a character progresses and levels up and explores and has this adventure. And again, storytelling. It's all about storytelling. And it's, there is, like I said, there is that aspect of rolling the dice and putting stats and number crunching and stuff like that. There is that, in which it makes it kind of customizable and cool. But for the most part, like 90% of it is all up here in how you react to those situations. The dice just tell you kind of like the results, and also
cool dice.
20-sided, 4-sided, 6-sided, 8-sided, you name it.
It's like, what the hell's that? No, that's dice, really.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They,
Oh
they
yeah.
up the ante with that. And let me ask you guys something, because I know that there is a little bit of a controversy that Hasbro said that they were going to start using some AI in their Dungeons and Dragons in the future, and they've opened up that possibility. What do you think the possibility of AI within, like, I know you said the Dungeon Master, but
Mhm.
imagine a campaign that AI completely wrote. Is
Yeah.
that still enjoyable in the same way of using the technology to further the Dungeons and Dragons experience?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I
I,
mean,
I think so. Yeah. As a game master or something like that, and you want inspiration, you type it in like, "Hey, I need a write me a campaign that said get to this castle," and it gives you all these
Mhm.
things, and then say, "Type me some side quests of stuff that can happen on the way," and it does this for you. And again, you don't have to take it verbatim, but you
Of
can
course.
use that as a
Mhm.
guide, as someone that, okay, I created this campaign because there's sometimes it is hard for people to
Oh,
imagine, and versus like I can copy it what I see, but I have a hard time of coming up with things.
mhm.
uh Therefore AI, I think, would be absolute in this case, it'd be absolutely perfect for that situation. How I would use it would be for guidance. I don't know if I would
Okay.
take it verbatim unless it was a really cool campaign, but I
Yeah.
would take like, all right, that's a cool direction. Now how, and I'm going to kind of like add things or take away things to do that, and then get my players to do that. And then as you progress in your game, if your players are not really having a good time, you can kind of gauge that, then you change it next time you play. You kind
Yeah.
of like, all right, I'm not going to do that. Maybe I'll spice it, or maybe make it more dangerous or more funny or whatever. So you are it's a living, breathing document anyway. You know what I mean? So you would take those AI generated campaigns, and you would you would change it as you go, as you play.
Mhm.
see, I'm thinking
Because
more of like a computer game where it would be just randomly creating, it's like, okay, we're going to create a new maze down here in this dungeon. There's going to be a dragon over here. It's going to have, and it creates all these different stats.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's like,
that too.
this is a gold dragon over here.
Yeah,
There's going to be a red dragon down here. There's an
yeah,
owl
yeah.
bear that's going to attack, and it'll be different every single time you play.
Yeah, yeah. I think they have that stuff. I know. As far as video game wise, I know Baldur's Gate 3 is very popular. It's a D&D game, and you run around the world, and the environment reacts to everything you do. So if you don't kill this troll, if you help the troll, that she'll help you, or he'll help you, or whatever, or he'll send out minions after. There is like this real of time effects that goes on, just like a real game. But I like that too, where it generate. Yeah, there are like dungeon generators or scenario generators too, where it's like, hey, I would type in like, I need a 6-room dungeon, moderate difficulty with a chance to drop a sword that does this. Enter, and it goes, brrr, and then
See,
here's the whole thing.
I,
And
I think that makes it that would be more of what you can do with the AI. I don't know
yeah.
that I would really trust it to create brand new campaigns. It's more like we've
yeah,
got set stuff and they can change those things and move them around differently.
yeah,
But
yeah,
creating, like, oh, you have to get the chalice of this and go
yeah,
there. I don't know that it would be great at that.
yeah. Yeah, because it's up to you for that story element, that end game.
Right.
Where's the big bad, and why are you fighting these guys? And so you create the narrative of walking in there because you're helping somebody, or you promise, or you're avenging, your fallen family members or friends, or you're a treasure seeker and you just want fame, for fame and glory, kid. Right? So it's there's all these motivations, and that's why you have your character sheets that have your motivations as a character. So and there are AI generated characters too, like to
Yeah.
pull out, or you sit there and you create your backstory, and you
Well,
have a player's guide that goes along with like, hey, your race of character would not do this because it goes against their god and their beliefs, but maybe you want to be the black sheep, and then maybe write a little thing that says, I am against this, and I'm one of my own, so there's a lot of that motivates that campaign too.
yeah.
So it's not always the GM. The GM is the guy, but the players really, morph that in, as they go too. Why what's their motivation of killing that dragon?
Yeah, well, I know that it's such a taboo subject, especially in the artistic world, especially
Yes,
right
it is.
now
Yeah,
that
yeah,
we're going through some of that through the writing world and everything. And I'm like, AI is a tool, and
Yeah, yeah.
that's all it is. It's exactly, we use Final Draft, and before we used Final Draft, we were using Word or Word
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Before we were doing that, we were using typewriter. It goes through the situation. If you use it as a tool,
That's a
an
tool. Absolutely.
enhancement, then I think it's okay. It shouldn't do something completely creative where
Yeah.
it's getting rid of some of the human elements, but I think you have to start using it as a tool. And I'm curious and slightly curious to see what Hasbro's going to do when they start actually using some of the AI, because I do think running away from it is not going to be the key. I think you have to use it usefully in
Yeah.
whatever you're doing.
The great things about these types of entertainment, these types of games or role play games and card games is that players are very creative and they want to be creative. And as much as Hasbro, because they own Fantasy Flight or Wizards of the Coast, which or and they do these Dungeon Dragon stuff, and as much as they could put out rule books and all that stuff, it's from the inception, the creators are like, look, you don't have to do this, but I'm giving you the imagination to do it. And these are some guides. Like I said, one of the best things I love doing was taking the monster manual and going, that's an interesting monster. And I was reading the backstory and reading the stats. I go, I'm going to take this and I'm going to use the look of the monster and some of this backstory, but I'm going to put it into my campaign as something that it belongs there. And so even if Hasbro and they gave us these rules, they're not in your lane rules. They're just, like I said, they're guidelines. And that's, like I said, they can do a lot of stuff on their end, but players will fight back. Magic the Gathering, they're seeing that too, where they're just pumping out these sets and sets and sets, and players are like, look, forget it. If you want, I'm going to print out my own cards. I'll do my own decks. I'll do my own thing. And sometimes there's that too much of a good thing on the business end of it, where you don't want to just press a button and have 7 scripts like Scream and be like, here you go, make these movies. They're all there. All dialogues there, characters all there. It's shitty. Oh yeah, well, but we'll make $5, and so 5 times a million,
Exactly.
5 million, and that's where we hurt. And then as consumers, we're allowed to say no, and we're allowed to say, I'm not going to go see the movie. We're allowed to speak with our wallets, where there's no obligation for us to consume everything that they give us, because if it's not good, then it's not good.
You don't have to force yourself to it. And I think that's the aspect that you have freedom. It's not somebody holding a gun to you.
Yeah, I say we're allowed to say no. Exactly.
You stop at any time you want. You could do whatever else. You can switch campaigns. But I know we've been talking about this. I know we've been talking about this in the green room behind this. But I guess we're gonna start trying to formulate a game where we can actually do that, where we can actually bring that to one of these episodes, and really try to massively explore it. We may have to rope in some of the other guys from the Sorlac and the Shadow Nose Network into it too. But
they'll be down. I forced them many times to play something.
And also maybe get some outside from some of the viewers out there too. So if you guys want to see us do a major campaign and do something like that, hey, this is what the comments are for. We're looking for new and different ideas. We want this show to be completely interactive.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the same exact way. So it's your show as much as it's ours. So let's know in the comments what you guys think about that.
Yeah, and there's a program called Tabletop Simulator, and Tabletop Simulator allows you to, and they work with D&D, the app, where you can put your characters in and then upload it to this character sheet, and you play. And at the Tabletop Simulator, you create the environments you want, and you play just like this. You have your cameras and you have your rolls, and you can roll digital dice or physical dice. It's all there. Like today's day and age, there's like zero excuse anymore for any kind of I don't have friends. Really? It's like, you don't have to go outside anymore. I mean, it's all there. But that is a tool which is getting better and better and better for these type of comic book store type, backroom games like Warhammer and X-Wing and D&D especially, and Dungeons and Dragons isn't the end all be all. There's tons of role playing games out there.
Oh yeah,
like like I said, I've roped the Starlight Digest guys into Star Wars role play, which is like D&D but Star Wars. Different kind of rules, but again, same concept. And you just if you're not into the fantasy and whatever, there's sci-fi. There's
I got an Indiana Jones one.
There's the Indiana Jones is good. There's Marvel ones. There are like I said, military campaigns that you could do. It's all there.
Challenge your imagination to come alive and to battle with the creatures of Dungeons and Dragons. Grapple against the forces of evil as a Marvel Comics superhero. Hunt adventure and glory as Indiana Jones. The all-new role-playing games of TSR and Dungeons and Dragons. Unleash the power of your imagination.
And that's how D&D started, by the way, was like military campaigns, more or less medieval stuff, like knights.
It's like, this war is cool, but wouldn't it be better if there were dragons?
Yeah. So what's a dragon? It's like yeah. So again, we owe the homage to all things is stemming from Lord of the Rings right to Dungeons and Dragons, and everything that we talk about has that foundation, and they're which I'm so glad that fast forward from when we were kids to now that this is a household name. It's a household name. Everybody knows Dungeons and Dragons, no matter what. Now it's like, oh yeah, cool. It's acceptable.
Well, everything like Star Wars, Marvel. Star Wars people knew at the time because it was such a big cultural thing. Yeah, but comics. Yeah, that was very small, very fringe. Yeah. And it was just when we were starting to get the comic shops. Yes. Before you had to go to the newsstand.
Yeah, the news. I used to go to the grocery stores, and they had the little
spinner racks.
Yeah, spinner rack. Yeah, liquor stores had them too. Yeah.
Yep, 7-Eleven.
Playing Double Dragon, grabbing my TMNT comic, and
there you go. There you go. It's always great that you see it kind of rope around to again, because like we're gonna use it. We made it cool. They're like, send that and put that in the comments. Thank us. Yes, we made it cool. We took the persecution.
Yeah, we did.
Cool.
And we did.
Yeah, well, no, we got beat up for it. We got bullied for it, and the ones that are here still playing it. Now everybody, if you go to any group and say, let's go have a D&D night. All right, cool. They're in for it, So
it's in the same way that I see people like, we're back in the day, the friends of like, the adults had the poker, kind of thing, and the card tables out. Yeah. And then I'm looking at the prices of some of these gaming tables, and that just
next level, man. Next level.
I was like, my God, this is like serious business here, because I think I saw one for like $3,500, $6,500. I'm like, okay, this is replacing dining room tables here.
Yeah, like
tabletop
fully
things, but
interactive.
It's amazing how that comes around, man.
Yeah, fully interactive. Like I said, one of the best things to do is to go have people over, and you get them in that immersion thing. Like I said, you put the music on. If you're in a tavern, you put tavern music on. You have it. Everything with the phone. It's all touch away. You sync it up to your surround sound. You do the lighting nowadays. We have lighting element. I mean, everything's there. It's like the perfect world for D&D. If you're in a tavern, you put the lights on yellow, you put the tavern music on, and you start your campaign. Yeah, exactly. It's like you go to a dungeon, you put eerie music on, and you put it red in the room, and they walk away being like, that was awesome. That was cool. I cannot wait to see where my character goes. And that's why you have those celebrity shows, and sometimes they get overly emotional when a character dies. Yeah. And it's because they spent sometimes years. There is on YouTube one guy has been doing a D&D campaign, I think, for 14 years.
Wow.
14 years, once a month. And when people, and you got to sign up to get into this campaign because people die in it all the time. And like in D&D, when you die, you sometimes if you don't have like a resurrection or a way around it, you're dead. Your character is dead. But that's part of the story. It's just like a movie, watching a movie, and sucks that it's your character, but there's also, you always can like bring a new character in the fold or find a way of resurrecting, depending on whatever the GM wants to do. Yeah, it's great.
Well, I'm looking forward to diving into some of this, and we're going to definitely
we'll set it up.
We're definitely going to take our viewers on to this magical ride, and like we're hitting at the hour spot right here, so that means that our campaign is coming to an end.
Yes,
for this episode. But I would be remiss if I did not thank our 100% great sponsor, the Tashi Station Emporium. If you're looking for figure stands, this is the premier company to get it from. Roll the video.
Beautiful.
Oh,
Beautiful.
absolutely. Let me tell you something. It's not the music that makes those stands epic. It's the stands that make the music epic. And
Thank you.
again, man, just great work every time I see it. If you've got whether it's NECA, whether it's McFarlane, whether it's Hasbro, whoever, whatever characters you have right now, thin legs, big legs, and everything, this is the only stand that reliably you can get that will stand any figure on it. Even those McFarlane Batman animated figures
Yeah.
stand well on a Tachi Station Emporium, and they don't stand on McFarlane's actually stands. that
No, they
well.
don't. That's the reason why I did this venture, because like it's
Yes,
not working.
that's what we needed to. And I
Yeah.
had a character problem and everything, where like the characters fell over, and I was like, damn, I need to get more Tashi Station Emporium stands, or else I would have had all these classified figures fall over. And that's what you don't see. So if you haven't bought 10 already, what are you doing? You can catch them on, like I said, right here on the Tashi Station Emporium YouTube channel. You can actually catch them on Instagram, or like you saw the .com that was also there you can purchase things from. Anything new coming? Because I know you're working on some new live stream stuff, right, sir?
Yeah, I've got a 3D printing review. If anybody who's actually thinking about 3D printing or want some information on the new Bamboo Lab printers that are taking the world by storm, I've got a review that's coming out. I do have a live stream coming out that's going to expand on some of those images that you saw. And we'll see. We'll build some sets out together live and get people's feedback, because I love feedback, good or bad. I take it all in consideration. That's what propels me to do more. So
absolutely. And this is not the only show. While Darth Moocher, our friend, is coming over from the Sword Like Digest podcast YouTube channel, and here on the Shadow Nose Network, you're getting Medieval here, that's dropping every Monday.
Yeah.
Wednesday, if you're looking for something to do Wednesday, well, let me tell you something. We've got you covered.